For decades, it seemed like the West presented the single unbreakable front against Russia. But lately, well, that front has started to show some pretty serious cracks. We're hearing some really surprising things from key European leaders, and it suggests a major shift is happening. So, what's really going on here? Let's unpack the analysis.
It all kind of kicked off with this headline, which, wow, it really turned some heads. You've got the Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, a leader from a core EU nation, publicly saying they need to talk directly with Russia about Ukraine. I mean, a statement like that just completely flies in the face of years of coordinated policy and sanctions.
So that's the big question, right? After all these years of taking such a hard line, why this sudden dramatic pivot? To figure that out, we can't just look at what's happening in Europe or Russia. According to the source material we're looking at, the answer actually lies way to the west, across the Atlantic.
The analysis points to one primary catalyst, what it calls the Trump effect. This was a period of really intense pressure from the United States that basically forced Europe to take a long, hard look in the mirror and reevaluate its actual place in the world.
And look, this wasn't just a one-off thing. It was a consistent, relentless pattern of pressure. It came in all sorts of forms, threatening trade tariffs, publicly blowing off European leaders, and treating long-standing alliances like NATO as just another business deal. The underlying message was becoming crystal clear.
This one story just perfectly captures the whole dynamic. When French President Macron supposedly had issues with the US trying to buy Greenland, the alleged response was just blunt. Be quiet. We'll just put tariffs on you. See, it wasn't a negotiation between equals. It was a directive, and it showed the kind of raw transactional pressure Europe was really feeling.
And then there's this number, $70 billion. After leaning on European nations to stop buying Russian energy, what happened next? The United States turned around and sold them an estimated $70 billion of its own. It was an absolute masterclass in using political pressure to make a massive economic gain. So, you see, that economic lever, it was pulled, and it was pulled hard. By making Europe so dependent on American energy, the U.S. effectively changed the continent's entire economic stability to its own political whims. European autonomy was just slipping away, and this deep sense of dependency started to set in.
But this growing dependency wasn't just about money or energy. No, it was also deeply, deeply baked into Europe's military and security structure. And that brings us straight to NATO.
Now, this is where the analysis gets really fascinating. It draws this parallel to something called the subsidiary alliance system, a tactic the British used back in colonial India. And the playbook is exactly the same. You offer protection, you take control of their defense, and then you use that very protection as a tool for political leverage. The source argues that this is precisely the model America set up with Europe after World War II. And if you want to see why that model is so incredibly effective, you just have to look at the money behind NATO. The United States foots the bill for roughly 75% of the entire defense budget. Meanwhile, major European powers like France and Germany, they're contributing just tiny fractions of that. Let's be real, that's not a partnership of equals, that's a dependency. And this is the scary part, right? This is when that protection suddenly starts to feel a lot more like a threat. This quote from Donald Trump says it all. He's made it clear over and over that the U.S. wouldn't defend allies who don't pay up. The very foundation of the alliance was being reframed as a subscription service that could be canceled at any time, basically turning that protective shield into a leash. So you put all of that together, the economic pressure, the military pressure, and it has led to a really, really painful realization in capitals all across Europe. The continent's leaders are waking up to a brand new and pretty sobering reality about how much influence they actually have on the world stage. I mean, if you look back, this didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow but very clear slide. Right after World War II, Europe was one of the architects of the global order. During the G8 era, it was a key partner. But by the time the Ukraine war started, its role was pretty much to just follow the US line. And now, today, it's desperately trying to find its own voice, its own agency. The source material uses this one analogy that is just, wow, it's so powerful and humbling. It describes Europe's old self-perception like this. It was like a dog trotting along under a massive cart, totally convinced that it was the one making the wheels turn. It mistook being close to power for actually having it. And here's another great visual from the analysis. It describes the EU nations as a garland of decorative lights, all wired together but fused. They couldn't light up or go dark on their own. Their fate was tied to the flip of a single switch, and that switch was held firmly in Washington. Okay, so now that they've had this wake-up call, what happens next? As Europe tries to figure out a new path forward, it might be looking at other global powers, ones who have faced these same kinds of pressures but played their cards very differently.
Just think about the difference in approach here. Europe, mostly following the US lead, went all in on isolating Russia. Contrast that with India, which from day one has consistently kept the lines of communication open with both sides, pushing for diplomacy. It's a strategy of balance that, frankly, Europe is only just now starting to seriously consider. And this brings us to what's probably the most important takeaway of all. Europe's sudden pivot toward talking with Russia isn't really about cozying up to Moscow. It's about getting its own hand on the light switch. It's an attempt to break free from that string of fused bulbs and finally get the ability to light its own path. It's a full-on quest for what they call strategic autonomy. Which, of course, leaves us with the million-dollar question. Can Europe actually pull this off? Can it navigate these incredibly tricky dynamics and reclaim its spot as an independent global power? Or have the tectonic plates of geopolitics already shifted for good, locking us all into a totally new world order? I guess only time will tell, but it's definitely something to think about.